Hi everyone, and we're back for another episode of our podcast. I'm here with Jude Samuel,
Hey, buddy.
and this week we have a very special, very charismatic guest. Is Mr. Roman Dela Cruz. He's a native of Guam. He's also one of the founders of Fokai Industries, which our first guest, Mr. Tone Anderson, has mentioned. They grew up together, they're best buds, and he talked a bit about the history of Guam, cultures, how people, good vibes, and things that we should be doing to connect with people around this world, especially nowadays. And yeah, it's a lot of offshoot about different things, but it's a very interesting talk. So without further ado, it's Rome.
Alright, let's get this going, man.
Right on. Viking, how you doing?
I am fantastic. I mean, besides this whole thing, but I'm still keeping it together. We bought I showed you, we bought a paddleboard the other day, so I've been going out to the lakes, and so that was a really highlight of the whole month.
Right on, man. Yeah, embrace it. And I know the weather's colder out there, so those inflatables are a lot more solid in the colder water. Yeah, when you bring them into the warm water, I mean, they still work, but they kind of like, it's like, oh man, it's a little bit slow if you're used to feeling like a real solid board, but they're just great stuff altogether.
Awesome.
I don't have the weather or the means to have a paddleboard by me. I'm in London, central London. Yeah, we've only got the River Thames, and that's it, man.
Wait, are people paddleboarding in there?
No. No.
Hey, have you guys seen that one magic dude, that one magician guy who walks on the River of Tynes?
No.
Yeah, man. This guy, I forget his name, but he's kind of like the David Blaine of Europe.
Oh, man. Oh, I know who you mean. Oh, damn. Your name begins with D as well. You see, this is how it happens, man. Old people, we start to forget stuff now.
Oh man, Viking, what are you? Are you 35?
Yeah. Now I'm 33.
33 years old. Jude, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Anyway, on to the next question.
All right, okay.
No, good, man. Good.
That was a great interview. Thank you very much.
So listen, man. So tell me a little bit about yourself and stuff like that. Guam. I want to know about Guam, man. I'm going to grill you about that, by the way, Guam.
What about
and also,
Guam? What can
you're the international mystery man. I mean, people heard about you, but they couldn't find anything about you, though. So
no, you know why they call me that? The only reason why they call me that is because I lose my keys in every country. So the international man of mystery is actually in reference to my keys and my passport. That's the most mysterious thing. But what can I say, man? I'm half Filipino, half Chamorro guy, born on Guam, who, in the course of being born on Guam, tried to have as much fun as possible that I could have on Guam. And in the course of all of that, I started to really appreciate Guam. And then in the course of really, really appreciating and loving Guam, made me want to, personally, I wanted to do something for Guam. So the line of work that, that I'm in right now, initially I thought I was supposed to be a doctor, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. But in the line of work that I am right now, I guess we're just found another way to help people. So, pretty much that. I stand-up paddle surf, I bodyboard, I enjoy downhill skating, and I sling rocks.
Yeah, tell us about
etc.
the stone slinging, because it's I was looking at an interview with you the other day, and it talks about it's one of the things that are very cultural with regards to Guam and its history and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, stone slinging is massive for Guam. I mean, if you look at our flag, for those who might be familiar with the flag, it has a symbol like this.
Mm.
And what that symbol is, it's in reference to sling stones, which is, this symbol. So these kind of rocks, these stones for years have been, being located in the beaches and, in the shore or in the jungles or whatever. And what these are, there's a lot of these are artifacts from hundreds or maybe even thousands of years ago. And people kind of raise the question, they're saying, with all this modernization, why do we still have these things that are still showing up hundreds of years, supposedly after it had been, after it stopped being practiced by the local people? So archaeologists, historians, and everybody throughout this way of thinking has been able to decipher, also from old Spanish documents, that stone slinging was a massive part of our culture, and not only for warfare, but it was also for sport. So when you really look at, for those that take a close look at the Guamanian culture, we're the oldest Pacific Island culture, So in order to sustain ourselves, we're between the historian that you talk to, we're as young as 3,500 years old and as old as 5,000 years old, if not even older. But in order to sustain life for that long, especially in a small island, you can't be warlike. You got to have some kind of, you have to have a really excellent way of coexistence. And so, and in a sense, what we've been able to, what they've been able to deduce is that there was a massive appreciation for life right here. So the sling stone, and I could go on about it, but the sling stone says so many ways. It doesn't only talk about the proficiency of our ancestors as warriors, but it also talks about the proficiency of our warriors and craftsmen as thinking men, because we have, there have been so many different variations found in our sling stones, and what they've been able to agree is that we had a very extensive knowledge of aerodynamics and hydrodynamics, which was really evident in our very advanced sailing vessels.
Mm. Okay, what type of rocks are the stones made out of?
They're made out of basalt. We've had some made out of basalt, a lot of limestone. There's clay. Some of the outer islands have even reported sling stones made out of meteorite. You know what I mean? Meteorite. So some pretty, it actually gets quite interesting. And we even have some sling stones. Now, for the longest time, people, because we're proud of being from Guam, we kind of, our historians were telling us that we were the only ones with this shape of a sling stone.
Yeah. And,
so we're saying, oh yeah, so it really made us feel really, really advanced, you know what I mean, as a people. But, after going through and, we're involved with international slinging sport right now. So we've been able to find that this shape has been very common with more than 50 cultures that have been slinging around the world independently, so imagine we're proud of slinging being as slingers, we're proud of it because we know our ancestors used to do it, but there are at least 50 other cultures whose ancestors also used to do it. Some people have even made the count as high as 70. So when you look at this, if there are 50 other cultures that have been slinging stones and you find that commonality between people, you start to, when you really start to marinate in that mindset, it kind of brings you to that, you arrive at that point saying, wow, we spoke different languages. We never met each other, but we had appreciation for the same things. And we came to very similar conclusions in science, which is like the shape of the stone. So it kind of shows us that we're not, it's nice to know that you were thinking, that people think you think the same. It's nice to know that you have common ground with people that are so far beyond even your imagination, So we've taken all those positives and we've really just immersed ourselves and marinated in slinging. And right now our ambition is massive. Next year will be the 500-year anniversary of not just Guam and Spain's first contact, but there would be the Pacific Islands and European explorers. That's the first major contact that's ever happened. So next year, with the commemoration of this 500 years, we're looking to make a very big statement with stone-slinging.
Okay. What brought about the resurgence? Because I can see it in like other cultures and stuff, like, you know, former colonies, etc. You know, that search for, you know, that the youth or you know, a certain generation has that search to kind of get back to the core of what they used to be like, or what they kind of, you know, what their parents went through. So what brought that around for yourselves?
Well, for myself, you know, I can't speak for the rest of the island, but for myself, is I've always been, you know, being half Filipino and half Chamorro in Guam in the generation that I grew up, that was really a struggle, because there was there was a lot of tension between Filipinos and Chamorros. So having to choose which side you want to represent, or are you Filipino, or are you Guamanian, whatever, and which made things even harder is the school that the village that we went to the school in was a very fighting village. So if you're going to make a statement, whether it's going to be as a Filipino or a Chamorro, you know, that statement, you're going to be fighting a lot. So, you know, I mean, growing up on Guam, I'd say just about every kid has been into several street fights in their life, but in, you know, certain places there's more than others. So anyways, what had brought it back is I'd say people just really, you know, for a long time, the people on Guam, when we were westernized, we were kind of taught to believe that our culture was inferior, and taught to believe that ways of practicing, of fishing and farming, that these are like Neanderthalic, these are only for failing people. You know what I mean? It seemed like the victory wasn't really in what you could do physically; it was more on what you could achieve mentally. And because, you know what I mean, just because we have different things, we started to think that farming and fishing and these things were just brutal things, you know what I mean? And saying, oh no, I don't want to be that farmer fisherman who's never really going, who we kind of started to believe that's never really going far in life. So we started to shun on those things, and we weren't just embracing or accepting westernization. We were actually chasing it. But then there came a time when we started to wake up and say, hey man, our culture is worth it's worth fighting for. It's worth understanding. We need to make this a bigger part of our education. It makes no sense that we live on this tropical island and Chamorro history, Guam history covers about this much of our education, whereas U.S. history comes to about this much. Yeah. It's almost as if they're trying to tell us like our history is insignificant. You know what I mean? Like, so as we started to wake up with that, you know, the sling stone is something that's been revered in Guam culture for a very long time. But, you know, most people were satisfied with, we revered it so much that we, you know, a lot of people didn't even want to touch it. You know what I mean? It was almost like taboo. There's a prior way of thinking before, like if you would, when our elders would find this in the jungle, and that way of thinking still exists. It's, hey boy, leave it alone, don't touch that. You know what I mean? But now I think just because they came from a generation that was kind of trying to bury and move away from the old ways, it was easier to think, especially when we used to have our own gods and our own way of our own concept of the afterlife. Yeah. But in the course of colonization, the people taught us that the ancestors that we were speaking to, that these spirits that we were speaking to were not good, they were evil. You know, so to the point where, imagine where before we had a very intimate relationship with our ancestors. You know, it was almost like the living and the dead were living comfortably among each other. But then now they started to tell us that, no, these spirits, these guys that you have this great relationship with, no, these are evil. The only spirit that's good has to come and look like this guy right here. You know what I mean? Needs to look like Jesus or whatever. Yeah. Meanwhile, these motherfuckers are touching little boys and doing whatever. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, not everybody's like that, but you know, whenever we get in the conversation of just of how they really, man, you know, they took, and depending on the historian you talk to, but they disintegrated our population from between 70,000 to 90,000 indigenous, and they took us down to 3,000.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was reading some stuff, the smallpox and stuff like that as well. You know, it's quite funny because it is a reoccurring theme amongst history. You know, with regards to actually colonization and the stuff that it brings, the good stuff that it brings, but also the bad about it, and the way that cultures get, you know, destroyed
I know.
and diminished. And now there's a resurgence of like people trying to discover like what their, you know, what their native ancestry was like. You know, it's quite interesting. You know?
No, and I think it's a good opportunity because with this colonization came some kind of modernization, and even though, you know, these horrible things did happen in the past, now we can use some of the tools that we have of the future, some of the byproducts of this colonization. We can use these tools to help bring light to the past. You know what I mean? So it's like taking your opponent's weapon and using it against him. But in this case, now we're not thinking in terms of warfare. We're thinking in terms of sustenance and of overall well-being, not just for us but for everybody. And it was actually that mindset, which is good, because that's a really good way to commemorate the spirit that governed these lands, that kept us alive and peaceful and well-fed and happy and satisfied for thousands of years.
Yeah, yeah, no, interesting, man. That's cool. That's absolutely cool, man. So, tell us about your brand, man. The brand, Fokai. Am I pronouncing it right?
What can I tell you about Fokai? Fokai's, boy, it's man, it's, golly geez, it's been it's man, I don't even, that, it's so hard to really, you know, it's amazing, man, because when you think about it alone in your thoughts, you can think, or personally for me, I have like 10,000 thoughts, but then sometimes it's hard to even put it in like words, you know what I mean? Like, it's almost, I think anybody who's spent enough time watering their own plant or taking care of something, taking care of a child or whatever, you know, there are emotions that exist that you can't even put a word to, you know what I mean? And it's those kind of emotions that are like really real. But what can I tell you about Fokai? Boy, Fokai is an indigenous word, you know what I mean? Contrary to the four-letter word that it sounds like, the profanity, you know what I mean? Yeah. The four-letter word Fokai was actually a very it was a very generous word originally. Tone had touched base on it perfectly in his interview, where the generation that we were brought up in before, we were halfway in between Fokai, meaning to beat him up, you know what I mean, or to fight with all your heart, and also to never give up. So they kind of had a very, at the time that we were growing up, they was very closely related, but the generation before us, Fokai was a very aggressive profanity, and you would, you know what I mean, you would only use those words in the harshest of situations, yeah, typically. Yeah, well, it came into our lap. I'd say first ambition we had with it was about in 1991, and then it just stayed a conversation for about it was nothing but a conversation for at least 6 years, and then finally, you know, was talking to most of the boys, where we decided to take action. And initially, it was a start. It was a big vision for it is because when we were growing up surfing, a lot of us wanted to be in this generation of welcoming Westernization. We wanted to represent. We want to be team riders for all these big brands, you know, like Gotcha and Quicksilver. These, you know, it'd be great to say I'm a team rider, I'm sponsored, I'm getting free gear from these guys. Yeah. But in the course of just surfing Guam, skating Guam, doing martial arts on Guam, we understand that we're making our sacrifices on Guam. You know, we wanted to represent something that was from Guam. But then in the course of representing something from Guam and emerging into that and seeing how deep that, you know, these ambitions grow even beyond the island itself, we started to fall in love with not just doing jiu-jitsu, or not just doing jiu-jitsu on Guam, or not just surfing on Guam, but we fell in love with the essence of doing jiu-jitsu in itself, of surfing in itself, and you know what I mean, and of perseverance in itself. And it was a, you know, so it was a course of, in all of that, it wasn't just something that we wanted to it grew to become something that we didn't just want it to represent Guam, but we wanted this to represent desire, ambition, drive, perseverance, spirit. You know what I mean? Basically, like the Force. You guys watch Star Wars?
Yeah.
Of course.
It's an old movie. Hold on, I think I lost the volume there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and
so
clear.
good.
Buddy. All good.
I don't know why I can barely hear you guys.
Because we
Hold
weren't
on, real
talking.
quick.
Good. Yeah. We were just listening to you, man.
You guys have a... Does this thing have a volume thing?
On a few,
On your phone.
Hold on. What was I saying? Yeah, and that's how we wound up here.
Nice, man. Nice. So was it 2006 you started the brand?
1997.
Ooh.
1999 is when we actually had our first license, and that originally started out at that time. I was working on a fishing boat. It had been started between myself. Initially, it was an ambition between a buddy of mine, myself, and a guy named Patrick Fleming, and it became that. It was that conversation among the boys for years, and then the catalyst for that was meeting again with an old friend, John Calvo, and we got it started. We initially started selling out of our backpacks. You know, we all had other jobs at that time, so we're selling out of the backpack. I didn't have a car yet. I was working on a fishing boat. In between my fishing trips, I would go and I would walk around the village and I would sell shirts, or I would use a company van on the way to picking up and dropping off tourists. I would stop over at friends' businesses and I would sell shirts.
Yeah.
There, eventually was able to buy a used truck, and then now instead of a backpack, it became a flatbed. You know what I mean? And then my buddy John had been selling. My partner at that time was also selling out of his house. We had friends that were living in different parts of the village where they got their own backpacks, and we had this satellite distribution program where people were selling out of their backpacks, going into doing home services, going into people's homes and setting up their own private thing. And then finally it was our most prestigious surf shop at the point wanted to carry the stuff, wanted to carry our label. And back then that surf shop was like a really big deal. They had all the cool Stussy stuff, you know, they had only the cool brands were there. And you know, with the initial ambition wanting to excel, and with surfing, it was so mind-blowing just to see Fokai right beside Stussy and Quicksilver. To see it on the shelves there was really, it was so enchanting at that point. We settled, we were selling it to the surf shop, only making $2 a t-shirt off of our profit, where they were making the lion's share. But, you know, I think for us, the value of it just being up with there was just, it was satisfying, you know. And then it got to a point where I had to lose. I was having a disagreement with my boss, working on a fishing boat. He ended up letting me go. I had been immersed in the water culture life, working on a boat. Big game fishing was my job, man. I was working on a deckhand on a boat, getting paid to go fishing, big game fishing, and then because our customers can't take the fish home to their hotels, the majority of our customers were Japanese tourists. They couldn't take their fish home, so we'd get to keep the fish and sell the fish. So it was crazy. I mean, I went from going to college, aiming to be a doctor, running out of money, so I had to come back to my island with nothing and just no money in the pocket, to finally I'm making really good money. I mean, back in the day, I'd say some days I was walking home with like $100, $150 in tips. You know, no real bills because I was still staying at home. Fresh fish every day. And in 5 years, in the first 2 years of that 5 years, I never even had to use a t-shirt. So it was a dream job. And then finally, after losing the job in 2000, I was able to instead of moving back to a job on the boat, reflected back to the whole campaign and definition of Fokai, which we were really embracing back then, which was perseverance, and decided to go full time with the job and say, okay, this is not this vision. Started to understand that Fokai was much more than a business venture, and the growth of Fokai was much more important than our personal ambitions. We started to understand not just what Fokai could do, not only for Guam, but we understood that even though other people were doing it at that same time, but we understood that the word, it's beneficial to everywhere to have proficiency supported with positivity. You know what I mean? So that just became the drive, and we kept moving. My partners had wanted other things, so they both left the company, and I was left with I was left at that time. We had just moved into a shop, and decided to try and make it work. And we're 16 years after having that first shop. You know what I mean? It took us 5 years to get into our first brick and mortar place, and then now we're still trying to make it work.
Nice. So when did Jiu-Jitsu enter the fray?
Jiu-Jitsu entered the fray right in the beginning. It was funny because, going back earlier in the conversation, we had mentioned how Fokai was in a very aggressive word, and the generation above us was always use it violently, right? Well, the generation above us was also the police officers. You know what I mean? So. Even though we had started doing jiu-jitsu because for anybody that surfs on Guam, you'll know that sometimes we get some good surf, but the most of the time we don't have any surf. And if you get so stoked from surfing good waves, the absence of waves can really lead to a terrible depression. So to get rid of this depression, we wanted to find other hobbies, and jiu-jitsu was a hobby that was able to keep us really, really stoked. Not only because, we went, just like everybody else when jiu-jitsu first came around, coming from a fighting island, you know what I mean? Self-defense is very, very important. Yeah. Being able to defend yourself, in jiu-jitsu brought that solution, brought the formula like nobody ever did. No one else did before. It was just, if you would take jiu-jitsu, it worked. This concept of a weight class and size difference wasn't even really too significant, because using jiu-jitsu versus a guy who doesn't use jiu-jitsu at all, man, I mean, it's, you guys know how that goes, So jiu-jitsu was in the early picture, but the thing is when we were selling stuff out of backpacks and training jiu-jitsu, and Fokai still meaning to fight, and us launching this all sports team called Team Fokai, people started, for the longest time, there was this misinterpretation that Team Fokai was a fighting group. Yeah. And there was a session years ago where we were the only guys that were training jiu-jitsu in this secret training group, and they had people from the police department that had their own secret group of people that were training jiu-jitsu. One day, our groups met up, and just law enforcement, I guess you have to either develop an ego or develop a way of falsifying an ego. You have to always have the upper hand, and I understand how that goes. So when it came time to the sparring, and our main guy sparred against their main guy, and our main guy ended up serving their main guy, they didn't really like us too much. So this whole notion of the Team Fokai being this fight group evolved. I mean, it got to the point where we were even investigated by the DEA. People thought we were this drug smuggling cartel. I mean, incredible. And and in the course of martial arts training, and I don't want to say the word extreme sports, because extreme sports sounds too it sounds so outside. You know what I mean? It's not like, I don't think anybody who does these things, I don't think they really call out rightfully, I don't think they pridefully say, I'm an extreme sports guy. Or I don't know. I'm not
Yeah.
really that dude or whatever. I just can't imagine people ever really saying that about themselves. But yeah, so we went over. There was a lot of rocky road for us to grow, especially in a population of 150,000. You had a good amount of the population that wanted to see their peers and their friends succeed. But then you also had this other part of the ability of the population that also thought that these guys were getting a little bit too loud, or they were getting a little bit they were getting too known too fast. We got to put a stop to this for whatever. So I'll tell you, it's so crazy that we've been around. We've had our first business license. We signed it in 1999, but we still have people that come into the shop today still wondering where the Fokai gym is at. You know what I mean? And that's happened. And you know, to be honest with you, the exclusive association with mixed martial arts before, as much as it got uncomfortable here, it was a road and it was an identity that we become very grateful for, because, you know, it's been able to grow this brotherhood. I think it was that mentality, the ethos of an aspiring martial artist or an ambitious fighter or whatever. It was that ethos that really, man, I mean, fuck, Viking, look, that's how I met you, dude. You know what I mean? You know, so you develop this great bond with people around the world. And, you know, even before, right now, when you look at a mixed martial artist, people can see that the mixed martial artist or jiu-jitsu guy, these people are intelligent, were kind human beings. But before, back in the day, where a mixed martial artist was like a cage fighter or whatever, or every guy with tattoos was whatever, you know what I mean? Like, not many people could see this, could see the positivities, or they can't see the brains behind all of these colors of these people. So when we're being here on this small island, when we're trying to campaign positivity, but meanwhile we got tattoos, we're smoking weed, and we're hanging out with all these flagrants and all of this, it was really, you know, to be honest with you, sometimes I don't even know how we, if I try to think of it mathematically, it makes no sense how we're still here, you know. But if, you know, when you really escape that and you just focus on the bond and the love and the respect, ultimately, I think really, it's really respect that has just kept us here for this long. You know what I mean?
I think hearing this, like the history of what you just said about the island and the culture, it's very hard to imagine, because people nowadays, like myself and others I've brought along, when we came to visit the island, it's nothing but just good vibes and good times.
No, and it is, and that's not temporary. That's very real. But I think a lot of that you see when I look at the conditions you came, you know what I mean? Every time the Mariana's open, and look at it, this is I think what's good is that, you know, I think that the carpet or the road that you guys have walked on is a road that has been built through this positive. And I'm not saying that we built the road, because a lot of people, there's just so many people that have contributed to not just what Fokai's doing, but just like who can see like the benefits of an era of positivity. You know, before it almost, you know, there are certain people who think that you have to take something out of somebody else's hands if you really own it. You know what I mean? And really, I think if you really just start to like kind of deprioritize the ownership of things and just kind of find a way to be, if you could find a way to find happiness through the happiness of other people, I think you're in a pretty decent place. You know what I mean? Some people, and we all know this, some people find misery in the happiness of others. And some people find happiness in the misery of others. You know, if we want to really be connected as a people or whatever, and I'm not fucking a preacher, I get all kinds of things wrong, and just let me know if I'm sounding too freaking crazy. But, you know, like, if you're going to find misery in the happiness of others and happiness in the misery of others, how are we unified like that? You know what I mean? So now it's just finding a way Now, instead of just being happy with the happiness, finding happiness in the happiness of others, and instead of just finding misery in the misery of others, it's the ethos of martial arts that tells you, that says, okay, now there is misery here, and we can be miserable at the misery of others, but now we need to graduate, and how do we turn this misery into happiness? You know what I mean? And if we can find a way how to want to be a part of that solution for other people, and finding value and understanding that their happiness can mean our happiness and whatever, and you know what I mean? And just all of that, I think you come closer to a better place. You know what I mean? You're building a better world. You know, so I don't even know how the hell we got off to that freaking tangent, man. But but
it's a pretty good message.
Well, you know, and it's a message that people have been speaking. I think people have said it in so many ways, in so many languages, but I think essentially, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's like, yeah, I think a lot of people have said it, and just people are now able to interpret it, embrace it, and more importantly, understand it and activate it. And, you know, these days, and now a lot of these guys that are doing this campaign of positivity, before it was, you know, I don't know how it was hundreds of years before, but it was easier for the weak man to cry for, you know what I mean? It's easy for the weak man to cry for peace because you don't know how to fight, you know. But if you got the fucking baddest guy in the room telling everybody to be peaceful, there's a different respect and a different attention that goes there, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so that's what I think Fokai's done that a lot. You know, a lot of formidable people have come to show their support and their love for the company. And, you know, I think I really wish we could be those millionaires or those billionaires who could pay these guys for the support that they give, you know what I mean? Pay them for what we'd love to pay them. But right now, I mean, that's one thing where we may have succeeded in some ways, but I think we could be more successful in other ways, you know what I mean? But, you know, we're not going to let that deflate us. You know, it's great to know there's room for improvement, because that means that we can only get better, you know?
Tell me about your gym, Purebred.
Purebred, great academy. The first total fight center on Guam. Purebred came around where there were other martial arts that were claiming to be street lethal and being dangerous and all of these things. But when Purebred Jiu-Jitsu came around, Purebred could really back it up. Thankfully, you know, I mean, outside of the gym challenges that came to probably most schools that were around in the early days of Jiu-Jitsu and no holds barred fighting, modernized martial arts, you know, there were all the thing that Purebred brought to the table was Purebred backed it up, you know, and Purebred was there. So Purebred was a martial arts academy that came to Guam when all the other martial arts academies, you know, there was still the promise of the force and the secret power. And, you know, like, if you ask, you know, I remember I had trained other martial arts before, and when I would ask an instructor about, you know, when is it going to work, I would more get the sense that you will know when it's time. Like, you will know that this will work in a fight because the fucking force will take over, right? Be good and your goodness will win the fight. Like, fucking God. Jiu-Jitsu came around there and said, okay, when this guy does this, he's going to do this and he's going to do this. And it was shocking because, like, trained martial arts, probably other martial arts 5 years before I did jiu-jitsu. And, you know, whenever you want to show these, sometimes you get eager, you want to show these things to your friends. Yeah. Or your friends want to see what you learned in the class, right? And say, okay, all right, okay, here, try this. Okay, do this. And then what? No, because you're supposed to hit like this. You're supposed to grab me, and it would never fucking work. And then, damn, I went to a freaking, first I was a big Aikido fanatic, and then I went to a class, and I remember this smart mouth guy was telling me how shitty Steven Seagal was as a martial artist. And this guy was a dick, but he asked me to roll, and he rolled the living crap out of me, so that made it even worse. But you know what I was really blown away was we learned the umpa, and we learned how to shrimp. You know what I mean? And we learn how to when you hold mount, how to be like a table, how to hold your base. And when I sparred that day, the guy showed it to me. I probably drilled it only 10 times max, and then it worked in sparring. I said, holy shit, this thing worked. This guy showed me this minutes ago, and it worked today. Whereas everything else, you have to train it 10,000 times, and only then you will know. Maybe fuck off. But yeah, jiu-jitsu brought that. Purebred was the face of that. Purebred was the face of that here on Guam. So even though right now it's a jiu-jitsu academy here on Guam, it did start as a total fight center, and it was started with that question. It was started because we were pursuing martial arts that worked. So Purebred has been around, started in Japan. They've opened up segments throughout different parts of the U.S. I think it's actually in Guam, mostly in Guam, that it's a pure, and also in Philadelphia, because BJJ United is a purebred affiliate. Right, I think it's only probably in Guam and Philadelphia that we're primarily a jiu-jitsu academy.
Okay.
That's Gerard Wiener, right?
Jared Wiener, yes. Great guy. Magnificent dude. Great people in that academy.
Awesome.
Nice.
So Rome, could you tell us a bit about, maybe for people who don't know, or the island, or yourself, could you tell us a day, a day of Rome, like what you go through in a day, what you do?
Okay, I'll tell you what I'll tell you what I did today.
Because I think it's a very special lifestyle that a lot of us city people don't really understand.
But I have a good recommendation for that. And I can't say this because I've never been a full-time city guy, but what really changed my my understanding and my experience of the city, what changed it entirely, was chasing sunsets and sunrises. When you put the city in the scope, if you put the city, for me, when I put the city in the framework of sunrises and sunsets, then the city life becomes very, very much more enjoyable for me personally. But yeah, so going back to your question, what I do is I have this sleeping disorder where I get up before the sun rises. So what am I going to do if I get up before the sunrise? I used to reject it, but now I embrace it. So I watch a sunrise. Right now, I've been watching the sunrise from the shop. So I watch a sunrise. I water our plants. Started working on my first marijuana plant, which has been really nice. So water the plants, play some music, maybe take a couple puffs, have a coffee, go to the beach. By that time, it should be about 7 o'clock. During the rainy season, stand by for rainbows. Come in, get some work done, power in, put in 2 hard hours of great work. Get that in there. Then the shop should open. Have some lax time. Fill my midday with work. And then by 5 o'clock, try to get in some kind of an exercise, something just to get the endorphins turning. So that by that time for sunset, my head is in a good place, and that sunset gets a little bit prettier. Watch the sun, come back to work, have a beer, maybe a blaze, and then I watch Netflix until I sleep, which hopefully doesn't take too long. And then I wake up in the morning, get a little bit depressed of how I didn't sleep enough, and then I realized, I said, fucking stop being depressed, get out there and go chase it, so that's what it is. How about you, Viking? What's your day like, man? What's your day been like?
Well, it's I'm in the countryside at the moment, so it's pretty much just some sort of farm work, I would say. So I also wake up around 6, just to get some lone time, because I have a kid and and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's the family, dude?
It's good. It's good. You
Yeah.
know, despite of everything that we're going through, you know, with the COVID-19, it's
Yeah.
probably one of the better times that we have a lot of time to spend with our families. And you know, the sun, the weather's great, the food's great. The only thing is we don't have jiu-jitsu, but hey, it's life could be worse.
So what you been doing, man?
How's the COVID situation in Guam?
Boy, you know, the COVID situation in Guam, you know, unfortunately, and I'm going to fucking say it, our government is failing us right now. But, or I feel they are, you know, I think that our team could be a little bit tighter. So that makes it a little bit frustrating. But the COVID situation in Guam right now, I'd say there are a lot of people that are angry, but I'll tell you, I'd say a good amount of the population has remembered that we're living in an island paradise, you know, like, you know, I think like right now, what we've found is that people have become so dissatisfied with what money can't bring that's happened long enough where people are starting to find out stuff that money can't buy. You know what I mean? And that's been really good. Now, like, you know, we live in Tumon, so now you see entire families. Before, I'd say if you rewind this 20 years before mixed martial arts came to Guam, if you were walking on the fucking side of the road, everybody's going to ask you what was your problem. If you were running on the side of the road, you were probably training for a fight. You know what I mean? If you're running on the side of the road and you have a shaved head, you are definitely training for a fight. That was the concept, you know, like really, like, hey man, I saw you walking on the side of the road. If you were to tell them, yeah, because I parked far, people would be like, what? Are you crazy? So walking used to be a very rare thing here. It gets so darn hot that walking is unheard of. But now, I mean, in only 2 months, I'd say I've never seen Tumon as crowded. And now it's not just the athlete. You're not seeing that guy that just wants to be athletic. You're seeing the parents taking their families for a walk. You're seeing, I'd say, our sunset watching population has probably tripled right now just in Tumon Bay. You know, so that's kind of it's kind of negative because you're seeing this coagulation of people. You know what I mean? That's like all of this stuff that we're supposed to be avoiding. But, you know, you're kind of like, damn, man, you know, like, and a lot of people are starting to wake up here to all those conspiracy theories that are out there. Oh. You know what I mean? And you know, all that talk. But I'd say the COVID here has been really, I think most of the people here have found a way to really find that silver lining, you know, and, you know, just for, I don't know, maybe God meant it to be that way. The sunsets here since the COVID has started have been fucking absolutely ridiculous. I'd say have you guys heard of the green flash?
You showed it to me.
Yeah, exactly. I showed it to you, right? But so the green flash is like this sunset thing that some people make it. It's like in their bucket list. They want to do this once before they die, right? Fuck, yeah. I'd say like this last week, it's Friday. We probably had like at least three wow. green flashes, maybe 4, maybe 5. But you know, so you know, the islands, thankfully, it gives us that. And I think right now, what I do realize right now is that even I think not having so much to do here on Guam makes you kind of watch the skies a little bit more. So I think there are nice, gorgeous sunsets everywhere. I do believe that, you know, but I think just with our climate, our atmosphere, our way of thinking here, people, it's a little bit easier to focus on them. You know what I mean?
Could you tell people who don't know what the green flash is?
The green flash, what the green flash is, if you could attest this to being like the sun. So the green flash, all the green flash is, it's its final light that you see. Oh, wait. Oh, there. It's final. See that last shimmer right there?
Yeah.
That's that's the green flash right there. That's all you see. It's really, and to tell you the truth, and here's a great secret for you: if you want to see the green flash anywhere, you just look at the sun, and then you just take a piece of paper, and then you just, instead of waiting for the sun to drop, you just pick up your horizon. Green flash, green flash. Now you know. But yeah, that's what happens here.
Okay.
But yeah, man, I think for our jiu-jitsu academies here, now we've broken stuff down into different phases. I think our government is getting a little bit more comfortable. I think it's shocking, man. Like, I think this whole thing you can't expect. Nobody's seen this kind of stuff right here. This is some. Who would have been great for this is the Avengers. If we had the Avengers, Stark would freaking solve this problem. Oh! Yeah.
Oh, actually, there's one more thing that I wanted to ask. Do you still have that old artifact that you guys found on the beach in the shop?
Which one? We have several.
Giant head thing.
Yes, a giant stone head. Yes, we do.
Yeah. Could you do a little background, a short intro to this event?
Okay. Well, what's interesting is I think we may have found since then. I think we may have since you came. So we okay. Did you tell Jude about the artifact stone head already?
No.
Okay, maybe. All right. So anyways, about 30 years ago, my friend's brother had come across an artifact in the jungle, a stone head that he brought home to the family, but the family was so spooked that instead of bringing it inside, they wanted him to keep it outside. Oh. So he ended up passing away about 10 years. This guy always used to come back with artifacts. There are certain people here on the island that have a gift for getting artifacts from. They seem to get, so like 10 people can walk into a jungle looking for artifacts, but one guy who's not looking for artifacts is going to walk out with 3. Okay. So that happens very often. So a lot of people, the overall belief right now is that you don't find artifacts, you receive them as gifts. So anyways, this guy used to receive these artifacts. He always had that knack for finding a lot of artifacts, sling stones, etc. Well, so he found this stone head, brought it to his house. His house was, his family was all wigged out by it. They told him to keep it in the jungle. He ended up passing away. We saw it once at a barbecue. He ended up passing away at his, he passed away 10 years ago. We're artifact fanatics. We took great interest to it. We kept bothering the family, and the family said, "Hey, listen, hold the damn thing, man. You keep fucking bothering us." You know what I mean? So we decided to hold it, but we were asked to hold it with the request to find out the history of this stone. So we expanded this conversation of this stone for like 5 years. Couldn't find out. And let me see how long this thing will. I'm gonna have to carry it over here. So if you don't mind, I'll be right back.
I'm gonna laugh if he ends up dropping it. Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it right here.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I'd say it's about 80 to 90 pounds. Could you see the face? Yeah, so can you see these eyes with a different stone? There are different stones in the eyes, but check this out. So I've been searching the internet for a match for 5 years. But finally, a friend goes one of my buddies goes to his friend's house to smoke a joint, and he happens to see a stone head in his garden, and he calls me up and he says, "Hey, dude, I think this thing looks like the stone head in your garden, right?" So I'm like, "Hey, this is just a guy who went to go smoke joints at his house. I've been talking to archaeologists. I've been talking to professors. I've been talking to all these guys, emailing all these historians and all of that. But guess what? It was this guy that went to smoke a joint at his friend's house who ended up finding, I looked all over the internet, encyclopedias, he found a match to this stone head."
Wow.
So I go over there and I go and I find you guys can still hear me here? Yeah, so I finally go and pay this guy a visit to see this stone head at his house, and lo and behold, not exactly the same, but they're carved by the same hand. They look like they've been carved by the same hand. So it turns out that another year goes by and I'm trying to chase this guy down, and it turns out that the guy who had carved the other stone head is the father of this girl who I've known for a long time, many years. So what we're thinking is I've been scheduling a meeting to ask him the history of this head. Now that probably is that meeting, he's an introvert who lives in the jungle. So that meeting's probably not going to happen for a little while. But the thing is there's a possibility that he knows there's a great possibility that he knows the origin of this head, and there's a small possibility that he may have even made this head. But the thing is, in the course of finding out the history of this head, boy, I got to tell you, man, that's been a really, really wild one. I went all the way around the world looking for the answer, and I went all around the world looking for an answer, made research, had interviews, had all these questions in Ibiza, in Ireland, and all of that. And in the end, the closest match that I found was from a guy who was smoking a joint at his friend's house. So when I get that meeting with that old man, I'll let you know exactly how it goes.
100%.
Yeah, but yeah, this is Alfred. That's his name, and the adventure continues. But I don't know if you know, Viking. Did you know that? I was in Egypt last year, and I had this strange experience with the sun. My first day, I went in there to the Cairo Museum, and I've been studying the sun now for quite a while, and I ended up having this weird experience with the sun inside the Cairo Museum. So we went there for a Red Hot Chili Peppers concert at the pyramids, and when we're standing in line, I'm only in Egypt for maybe 15 hours at this point. I'm telling my friend about this. Telling my friends there about this really weird experience that I had with the sun at the, at the museum. So going there, we're about to go into we're trying to get into there are 3 different security checks to get into the concert. And one of these security checks, I have to go back because I ended up leaving I forgot something again. I forgot something at the security check. So I end up going back to get something at the security check, but I fall far behind my friends. At this point, we're in the desert. So I go down to take off I have to take off my slippers because I needed to catch these guys in the desert because we're moving too fast. I needed to move faster. And then as I go down to take off my slippers, I come across this.
Oh wow, another artifact.
It's a two-sided convex discoidal, and about a year later, because I started it for about a year later, I noticed that there are these indentations here along here that have the marks, that have 9 of the 12 marks of the zodiac that fall perfectly in line with the zodiac sign.
Mhm.
And this was recovered by the pyramids. When I went to go and research the zodiac and the pyramids, there is an Egyptian zodiac. And then now I'm in the process. If you guys happen to know any really, really skilled historians, we're really trying to find out what this stone was about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, we'll have that conversation offline. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
hello.
Yep.
Did I
No,
lose
no,
you
I got
guys?
you. I got you.
Well, that's right now. That's, oh boy.
I got
Hello?
you, man. I got you.
Thing.
You hear us?
Huh? Whoa. Whoa, it's freaking out.
Can you
Dude.
hear us?
Whoa,
No,
Moses.
we can hear you loud and
Whoa.
clear, buddy.
Okay. Sorry about that, man. It's like you touch this thing, then it starts to react. But yeah, man, if you guys happen to know any really good historians, any of those guys that talking ancient aliens, let them know I got something right here that I think really needs really tell some stories. Hey, and check this out, guys. It changes colors.
Huh.
But yeah. Okay, sorry about that.
Well, listen, my man. I got some homeschooling to go and do. Yeah,
man.
I got
Hey.
to do my little boy's schooling and stuff like that, man. But it's been an absolute pleasure
Well-
speaking to you. And
Yeah, Jude,
Yeah.
great talking to you too, man. Thank you very much for the time. Sorry if I went off a tangent there, but I always do.
thank you for the history lesson, man. Because it's I studied history in school, so I like to hear about other people's cultures and stuff like that. Especially yeah.
Oh
Just,
well, man, I'll tell you, man. There's some deep history here, and we'll tell. You know what I mean? You'll hear about it later on.
I've got to come and visit Guam, man.
Amen. There's great jiu-jitsu here. There's great living. Viking, we're waiting for you.
I'll be back soon, very soon.
Okay, guys. Well, until then, rock and roll. Literally, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate everything, man. And be safe out there, man. It's a small world.
For sure.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you very much, my friend. Listen,
Thank you,
take
Ro.
care. Be safe, be happy, be healthy, and enjoy the sunrises and sunsets, man.
Okay, God bless. May the
You
force
too.
be with you.
Take care.
See you, buddy.
Take
All
care.
right. Shoot.